He was a young man living in a small, crowded city where life was hard for many people. Every day was a struggle, but this day felt even more difficult than the others. His stomach was empty, and the hunger was growing stronger with every passing hour. He looked around the streets hoping to find some food or help, but the cold reality was that he had no money, no food, and no one to turn to. He had lost his job months ago when the factory where he worked closed down. Since then, he had tried. Many small jobs, but none lasted long. The money he earned was never enough to pay for food and rent. Slowly, his savings disappeared and he had nothing left. Friends and family tried to help at first, but over time, everyone had their own problems, and the young man was left alone to face his growing hunger. His clothes were old and worn out, his shoes had holes, and his hands were rough and dirty. He spent most of his days walking the streets, searching for anything to eat, but it was not easy. Sometimes he found a small piece of bread thrown away near a market, or a half-eaten fruit someone had left behind. These small things were like treasures to him. But today he had not found anything at all. As the sun moved across the sky, his hunger became a pain that was hard to ignore. His head felt light and his legs were weak. Even though he was very tired, he could not sleep because his empty stomach kept reminding him of what he needed. He thought about the last meal he had, which was days ago. It was just a small bowl of rice at a shelter. But now, even that seemed like a distant memory. People passed by him quickly, many with busy faces, going to work or meeting friends. Some looked at him, but did not stop. The young man felt invisible, as if he was a shadow that no one noticed. He tried to smile at a few children playing nearby, but the smile did not reach his eyes. Inside, he felt very lonely. He had a small bag with a few things. An old notebook, a pen, and a photo of his family. The photo reminded him of better times, when he lived in a small village with his parents and siblings. He remembered the smell of fresh bread in the morning and the warm sun on his face. But those days were gone now. The city had taken him in, but it had not given him a way to live with hope. The young man sat on a cold bench in the park. The wind blew softly, but it was not warm enough to make him feel comfortable. He looked around at the other people sitting nearby, some eating sandwiches or drinking hot tea. He wanted to ask for a little food, but his pride stopped him. He did not want to feel like a beggar. He wanted to find a way to work and earn his own meal. But as the afternoon passed, the hunger became too strong. His hands trembled and his vision blurred. He thought about what he could do to survive the night. There were places that offered free food, but they were far away, and he did not have the strength to walk that far. He thought about asking someone for help, but he did not know who to trust. In the quiet moments, the young man talked to himself. He promised to keep trying, to not give up. He remembered a saying his mother once told him, "Even when the darkest night is here, the sun will rise again." He held on to this thought like a small light in the dark. The city started to change colors as the sun began to set. Lights from shops and street lamps flickered on, but they did not make the young man feel safer. He felt more alone in the dark. Hunger was no longer just a feeling. It was a sharp pain inside him. He thought about his body, his only thing left to give. He wondered if there was any way he could use himself, his own strength, or something, about him, to get a meal. It was a frightening idea, but hunger can make people think of things they never thought possible before. He looked around again, hoping to see a kind face, someone who could help, but the streets were full of strangers, and no one stopped. He realized that the city was a hard place where many people had to fight just to live. Sometimes, it was not enough to be good or honest. Sometimes, it was just about survival. As night came, the young man made a small fire in a safe corner with some dry leaves he found. He warmed his hands and tried to rest. His body was tired, but his mind was busy. He planned what he could do tomorrow, how he could find food or work. He knew it would be another hard day, but he also knew he had to keep going. He closed his eyes and dreamed of a better life. A life where hunger did not control him, where he could eat without fear, where he had a home and friends who cared. But for now, the cold night and empty stomach were all he had. The young man's story was not unique. Many people in the city faced hunger and poverty every day. Some had no choice but to use their bodies or do things they never imagined just to have one meal. It was a sad truth that many wished to ignore. But inside the young man, there was still hope. Hope that one day things would change, that his body would no longer be his only currency, that kindness and help would come when he needed it most. Until then, he would keep walking the streets, searching for food, for safety, and for a future where hunger would not be the strongest thing in his life. The next morning, the young man woke up feeling cold and weak. The hunger inside him was still there, growing stronger. He knew he had to find food soon or his body would not be able to keep going. He stood up slowly, rubbing his eyes and looked around to see if anyone was nearby who could help. But the street was quiet, and no one seemed to notice him. He thought hard about what to do. There was a small market not far away where people sold fruits and vegetables. Sometimes when the sellers finished for the day, they threw away food that was still good but could not be sold anymore. Maybe, just maybe, he could find something there to eat. As he walked toward the market, his legs felt weak, but his mind was clear. Hunger made him desperate, but it also made him think carefully. He knew begging was not his choice. He wanted to find food without asking for charity. He wanted to keep his pride and dignity, even if his body was tired and hungry. When he arrived at the market, the streets were busy. People were buying fresh fruits, bread, and vegetables. The smell of food was everywhere, and it made his hunger feel even stronger. He walked slowly around the stalls, hoping to find something that the sellers had left behind. After some time, he found a small pile of fruits that looked old but still edible. He picked one quietly and started eating. The sweet taste gave him a little strength, but it was not enough. His stomach still growled loudly. Suddenly, a man near him noticed and called out. The young man froze for a moment, afraid he had done something wrong. But the man smiled kindly and said, "Are you hungry? Come with me." The young man hesitated but followed the man to a small restaurant behind the market. Inside, the warm smell of cooked food made him feel safe for the first time in days. The man introduced himself as someone who helped people in need sometimes. He offered the young man a meal. The young man was very thankful but also nervous. He did not want to feel like a charity case, but the kindness in the man's eyes gave him hope. He ate slowly, enjoying each bite as if it was a precious treasure. For a moment, the hunger left his body and he felt calm. After the meal, the man asked the young man about his story. The young man was shy, but decided to tell the truth. He explained how he lost his job and had nothing left to eat. The man listened carefully and then said, "I can help you, but you need to trust me." The man told him about a place where people like him could stay for a while. It was a shelter that offered food and a bed, but the space was small and the rules were strict. The young man thought for a long time. A warm bed and regular meals sounded like a dream, but he was afraid to lose his freedom. Still, hunger and cold were worse than fear. He decided to go with the man to the shelter. When they arrived, the young man saw many other people who were also hungry and tired. Some looked sad, others hopeful. The shelter was simple, but it had warmth, food, and safety. The young man was given a small bed and a bowl of hot soup. The soup filled his body with warmth and energy. He felt tears in his eyes, not because he was sad, but because for the first time in a long while he felt cared for. But even in the shelter, life was not easy. There were rules about when to eat, when to sleep, and how to behave. The young man understood that this was part of staying safe and keeping order. Sometimes, he missed the freedom of the streets, but he knew the shelter was better. Days passed, and the young man slowly regained his strength. He helped clean the shelter and talked to other people who shared their own stories. Some had lost their families, others had run away from dangerous places. They all had one thing in common: hunger had pushed them to the edge. One evening, the shelter manager called the young man to talk. The manager was kind but honest. He said, "We want to help you find a job, but work is hard to find. Sometimes people here must do small favors to get extra food or support." The young man felt a cold feeling in his stomach again. He asked, "What kind of favors?" The manager explained gently that sometimes people could help with cleaning, carrying things, or simple tasks. The young man nodded, ready to do honest work. But then the manager mentioned something else. There are times when some people might ask for more personal help, and they might offer food in return. You are free to say no, but this is a choice some people make when they are desperate. The young man looked down, understanding the meaning, without words. His heart was heavy. He wanted to survive, but he did not want to lose himself. Hunger had pushed him to this difficult crossroad. That night, the young man lay on his small bed and thought about his options. His body was weak, but his mind was strong. He knew that sometimes people have to make hard decisions to live another day. He promised himself to stay safe and not lose hope. He thought about the people who had helped him and the strangers who walked by every day without seeing his pain. He wanted to find a way out, a way to live with dignity and respect. But for now, he had to survive. The next day, the young man decided to work hard at the shelter, helping with chores and learning new skills. He talked to others who had made tough choices and listened to their stories. Some had found jobs, others were still searching. He learned that no one's journey was easy, but no one was alone. Even though hunger still whispered in the corners of his mind, the young man felt a small light inside him. It was the light of hope, courage, and the will to live. He knew the road ahead was long and full of challenges, but he also knew that every day he survived, he was stronger than the day before. After a few days at the shelter, the young man began to feel a little stronger. The warm meals and safe place helped his body heal, but his mind was still full of worries. He knew that just surviving for a few days was not enough. He wanted to live, to have a future where hunger and fear would not control his life. But life at the shelter was not easy. Even though the people there were kind, the young man sometimes felt lonely and sad. He watched others struggle too. Some had been there for months, and their faces showed tiredness beyond sleep. Some had stories filled with pain, and some had lost hope. One evening, the young man sat quietly on a bench outside the shelter. The sky was dark, and the stars were shining softly. He thought about the choices he had made and the hard road ahead. His body was no longer as weak, but his heart carried a heavy weight. He wondered if the decisions he might have to make would change who he was inside. He remembered the manager's words about the favors some people asked for in exchange for food or help. At first, he had hoped that such things were far, away from him, but now he realized that hunger could push people to places they never wanted to go. The young man wanted to find work. He spent hours asking around, looking for small jobs, cleaning, carrying goods, anything to earn money honestly. But the world was not kind. Many places were full, and some people did not want to hire someone without experience or a home address. Days passed, and hunger began to whisper again. It was quiet at first, but then it grew louder in his stomach and mind. Sometimes he would feel shame for feeling weak. He knew hunger was natural, but it made him feel like he had failed. One day, while working in the shelter's small garden, a woman approached him. She was older with gentle eyes and a warm smile. She introduced herself as Anna and said she worked with a local charity that helped people find work and housing. Anna listened carefully as the young man shared his story. She told him about a program that helped people like him learn new skills and find small jobs. She said it would not be easy, but it could be a chance to change his life. The young man felt hope again. He thanked Anna and promised to do his best. For the first time in a long time, he believed there was a path out of his struggle. But even with this hope, the young man knew the challenges would not disappear quickly. He still had to survive every day, and sometimes the hunger was so strong that it clouded his thoughts. One afternoon, while the young man was resting, a man from the shelter came to talk to him. The man was friendly but serious. He explained that there was a chance to earn extra food if the young man helped a visitor who sometimes came to the shelter. The visitor was a businessman who offered work but asked for personal favors in return. The young man's heart raced. He did not want to say no because food was scarce, but the idea made him uncomfortable. He thought about his promise to himself, to keep his dignity and find honest work. He spent the night thinking about this choice. He knew some people had accepted such offers, but he also knew it could be dangerous. He worried about losing himself and the respect he still had for his own body and mind. The next morning, the young man decided to talk to Anna about the offer. She listened carefully and said, "It's a difficult choice, but you must never forget your worth. No meal or money is worth losing who you are inside." Anna helped the young man find other ways to get food and support. She introduced him to a small group where people shared meals and helped each other. The young man joined the group and found comfort in friendship. With Anna's help, the young man started attending a training class. He learned simple skills like cleaning, cooking, and basic repairs. The classes were hard, but they gave him a feeling of purpose. He was doing something to build a better life. Slowly, the young man began to feel stronger inside. He met others who had been through similar struggles. They shared stories, hopes, and advice. They reminded each other that hunger and hard times did not last forever. But the young man also knew that some nights, when the hunger returned, the pain was real. Sometimes he would close his eyes and remember the difficult choices some people made to survive. It made him sad, but also determined to keep walking his own path. One day, the young man found a small cleaning job at a nearby shop. It was not much money, but it was honest work. He worked hard every day, learning and growing. He saved a little, bit of money each week, enough to buy food and a small blanket. His body was still healing, but his spirit was rising. He felt proud of what he was doing, even if the future was still uncertain. The young man understood that survival was not just about food. It was about hope, respect, and the courage to keep going even when the world was hard. He remembered the saying his mother told him, "Even when the darkest night is here, the sun will rise again." Every morning, he saw that sunrise as a new chance. Though hunger had once been the strongest force in his life, the young man now believed that his will to live and grow was stronger. The young man's days began to change slowly but surely. The small cleaning job at the shop gave him a reason to wake up each morning with a little hope. Though the work was simple, it helped him feel useful and strong. He was earning a little money, enough to buy food and save a bit more for a place to sleep. This new routine gave him some peace. One afternoon, after finishing his work, the young man met Anna again. She smiled warmly and said, "I have some good news. A local community center is starting a program to help people find stable jobs and learn new skills. It might be just the right chance for you." The young man's heart lifted. He wanted to learn and grow. He had been working hard, but he knew that to build a better life, he needed more than just small jobs. He needed a steady job, a safe home, and people who cared. Anna took him to the community center the next day. It was a bright, welcoming place where many people gathered to study, work, and share their stories. The young man felt nervous, but also excited. He signed up for classes that taught skills like cooking, basic computer use, and customer service. The classes were not easy. Sometimes he felt tired or confused, but the teachers and classmates were kind and patient. They encouraged him to keep trying, and slowly he learned new things. With each lesson, the young man felt more confident and hopeful. Outside the community center, the young man made new friends, people who understood his struggles and dreams. They shared meals, laughed, and supported each other. It was the first time in a long while that he felt he belonged somewhere. At night, when the young man returned to the shelter, he felt tired but happy. He knew the road was still long, but for the first time, it seemed possible to reach a better place. However, life still had challenges. Sometimes old fears and hunger returned, especially when money was tight. One evening, the young man found himself sitting alone, his stomach growling quietly. He thought about the hard days when he had nothing to eat and about the offers he had refused. He remembered Anna's words about worth and dignity. He told himself, "I will not give up who I am. I will find another way." Determined, the young man visited a nearby food bank the next day. There, volunteers gave him a warm meal and extra groceries. He was thankful but knew he could not rely on charity forever. He wanted a steady life. With this hope, he worked harder in his classes and at the shop. He saved money bit by bit, dreaming of renting a small room of his own. One morning, the community center announced a job fair. Many companies were there, looking for workers. The young man dressed carefully, hoping this was his chance. He spoke with different employers, shared his story honestly, and showed the skills he had learned. Though he felt nervous, he also felt proud of how far he had come. After a few days, the young man received a call. He was invited for an interview at a local cafe. The job was to help with cooking and cleaning. It was not a big position, but it was steady work with a small salary. The young man prepared carefully for the interview. He practiced answering questions and made sure to arrive on time. The interviewer was kind and asked about his experience and goals. The young man spoke openly about his past and his desire to work hard and learn. A week later, the young man was offered the job. He was overjoyed. It was the beginning of a new chapter. At the cafe, the young man worked early mornings and late evenings. The work was tiring, but he enjoyed it. The managers and customers treated him with respect. He learned to cook new dishes and improved his skills. His earnings helped him rent a small room nearby. It was simple, but clean and warm. For the first time in a long time, the young man had a place to call home. Though the young man was busy, he continued attending classes at the community center. He wanted to learn as much as he could. The friends he made there cheered for him and shared their own successes and struggles. One evening, while cleaning the cafe, the young man met an older customer who asked about his life. The young man shared his story with honesty and hope. The customer listened and said, "You have come far. Keep going. Your story will inspire others." The young man smiled, feeling proud but humble. He knew his journey was still not finished. There would be hard days ahead, but now he had the strength and support to face them. He often thought about the people still struggling with hunger and poverty. He wanted to help them someday, just like Anna and others had helped him. He dreamed of a day when no one would have to use their body as currency for food, when everyone would have enough to eat and a safe place to live. The young man understood that survival was not just about food or money. It was about kindness, respect, and hope. It was about never giving up, even when the world seems dark. With each new day, the young man moved closer to the life he dreamed of. He knew he was no longer alone. The young man's life was slowly changing in ways he had only dreamed about before. With his new job at the cafe and the small room he could finally call his own, he felt a growing sense of hope and purpose. Every day was still a challenge, but now those challenges came with the promise of a better future. He worked hard, waking up early each morning and staying late at night. The cafe became more than just a place to earn money. It was a place where he learned new skills, made friends, and felt respected. The customers were kind, and some even stopped to chat and encourage him. For the first time in many months, he felt proud of what he was doing. But the young man never forgot the dark days when hunger had been his closest companion. He remembered the moments when his body had been the only currency he had, and the fear and sadness that came with that reality. Those memories stayed with him as a reminder of how far he had come and why he wanted to keep moving forward. One afternoon, while cleaning tables, he noticed a flyer on the wall of the cafe. It was about a local group that helped people who had faced hunger and poverty to share their stories and support each other. The young man felt a spark of interest. Maybe sharing his story could help others, and maybe others could help him in return. He decided to attend the next meeting. When he arrived, he saw people of all ages and backgrounds. Some looked happy. Some looked tired, but all were there with the same goal, to find strength in their shared experiences. The young man listened carefully as others told their stories. When it was his turn, he spoke honestly about his journey, the hunger, the fear, the difficult choices, and finally, the hope and new life he was building. The room was quiet, and then people began to applaud. For the first time, the young man saw that his story had power. It could inspire others and show that even in the darkest times, there is a way forward. The group became a second family for him. They met regularly, shared meals, and helped each other find work, housing, and friendship. The young man learned that recovery was not just about fixing the body, but healing the heart and mind. With this new support, he began to dream bigger. He thought about learning more skills, maybe going back to school someday. He wanted to give back to the community that had helped him. He wanted to be a voice for those who still struggled in silence. The young man began volunteering at the shelter, where he had once stayed. He helped serve meals, organize clothes, and listen to people's stories. It was hard work, but it filled him with joy. He saw how small acts of kindness could change lives. One day, a young woman came to the shelter, looking lost and scared. She reminded the young man of himself not so long ago. He sat with her, shared his story, and told her about the help available. Slowly, he became a guide and friend to many people who had nowhere else to turn. His life had come full circle. From the streets where hunger ruled to a place where hope and kindness were stronger. The young man learned that no matter how difficult life may seem, the human spirit can find light in the darkest places. He continued to work at the cafe and attend classes. He made plans for the future, a steady job, a warm home, and a life where hunger would never control him again. But more than that, he dreamed of a world where no one would have to use their body as currency for food, where everyone had enough to eat, and where kindness was the most valuable gift. The young man's story became a message of hope, a message that even when life feels impossible, strength, courage, and help from others can create new beginnings. Every day, as he walked to work or sat quietly at the shelter, he remembered the words his mother had once told him. Even when the darkest night is here, the sun will rise again. He believed those words now more than ever, and with every sunrise, the young man stepped forward, ready to live a life filled with hope, dignity, and kindness.